I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Balara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Blake Dailey. Blake began investing in real estate with large renovations on storm-damaged homes after a Category 5 hurricane ripped through his market. Sounds like an interesting story. Blake has a actually extremely interesting bio. There's a few really great topics that we're going to dive into. But first, Blake, I just want to say thank you for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate having you.
Yeah, Jason, thanks for having me. We're kicking the new year off strong here, diving into some real estate topics, and yeah, excited for it.
It's a perfect way to get started. Let's start. Let's get your background. Tell us about yourself and kind of your start in real estate, and you know we'll kind of dive in from there.
Yeah, for sure. So I got started investing in real estate at my first duty station when I commissioned as an Air Force officer. I'm still in the Air Force. I got a year left. But got to Panama City Beach of all places, and I didn't know where my wife and I were going. Well, I guess we're about to be married in like a week, but we didn't know where we were going to go after our wedding. We were driving on I-70 and got the text message said, "Hey, you guys are going to Florida." I was like, "That's great." And we show up in Panama City, and it looks like an absolute war zone because they had a massive Category 5 hurricane there, I think 8 or 9 months before we got in. So a lot of down businesses, holes in roofs, down trees, just a lot of devastation in that area. But what a great opportunity to start investing in real estate. So before we ever moved into our first house, we were living in like the temporary lodging on base. And I remember I would go to like the library and print out a bunch of direct to seller um, like marketing pieces, like, "Hey, I want to buy your house," type of thing. And then I would write on the envelopes, and my wife would do the address and put the return address and put the stamps. We'd put like 50 or 100 in the mail every week. And before we moved into our first house, started going on these appointments with sellers. Keep in mind, this is my first time ever doing this, not, very green behind the ears, and just kind of figuring out as we're going. And we used our VA loan as well. So while that stuff was going, we're doing this direct to seller marketing and got into that side and started off with a fully damaged hurricane house, like holes in the roof, busted out windows, everything was waterlogged, and it was yeah, that's how we got started.
Nice. So something must have happened that, I mean, I guess you could say it's fortuitous that you moved to a hurricane ravaged area, but something must have happened to make you say, I'm going to the library and starting this, sort of directed, like what put that idea in your head?
I think there's just like a lot of built up potential of wanting to get started because I went to the Air Force Academy, and while you're there, you can't like own property or invest in real estate really. So I knew that I wanted to get into it. I was big into Bigger Pockets at the time, listening to the podcast, reading books around it, and just preparing to hit the ground running when I had the chance. And then kind of figured out the wholesale route of, okay, because being in that position of not having a lot of money, I wanted to find out how I could build up some momentum, build up some cash, and focus on the buy and hold rental strategy that I wanted to do. And just fortuitously, I got into the burst strategy because of the nature of the market I went into. Like everything was a rehab. You couldn't really find rehabbed homes at the time. So we were able to combine a lot of that. And I just, I wanted to get in the game. And I was a Division I athlete, so I played football at the Air Force Academy, and like that's a very all in type of thing, and that's just my kind of personality. Like when I do something, I want to be the best at it and learn it, and get better at it. There's I think fulfillment in that for the growth and the grind. So it was very, I think business is very comparable to sports in that fashion, where I could just use the drive I have, that benefited me in football and all those kind of things. And we just got into it, started fast.
So the first properties that you were going after, you were these were burrs, or were you flipping them or doing both, or how did your what strategy did you start with? And then I know you said wholesale, but the market didn't work. What strategy did you start with? How did that evolve?
So we really tried a lot really fast. So before we ever got to Florida, we were looking at houses on Zillow. Found a local real estate agent through Bigger Pockets, who I'm still good friends with today, and he's kind of the guy to know in the market. But I we found one and it had a house and a guest house, and I was originally looking for a house hack. Live in one unit, rent the others. And this was one of the better deals I found. It was actually one of the renovated homes, so that we could move in and not have to do a whole lot and kind of focus on getting our investments and actually have a decent place to live, because my wife starting out did not want to go live in a fixer upper. So this house had a little guest unit that we rented on Airbnb. So that was kind of like our base level, was kind of use the VA loan, get in 0% down, something with an extra unit where we can get our mortgage and our living expenses covered. And the reason we really loved Airbnb after some time was because we actually cash flowed to live there for free. We made like 100 or $200 a month after paying like all the expenses, which was awesome to get a first deal like that. But before that one was closing, like I was saying, I was writing these direct to seller letters and driving for dollars. So I was finding, places that were close to the base, because I thought that would be one of the areas that would build up the soonest, because that's one of the biggest employers in the area. They fly the new, or at the time, the F-22s, now the F-35s, and there's just a lot going on at that base. And there was a ton of reconstruction, rebuilding. So you've got contractors, all the, the different vendors and support personnel that come along with that. So I knew that area around the base would do really well. And it did. So we started looking in that area, and mostly burrs to start with. I've only done one flip ever. It was like a break even flip, just because the numbers on the front end weren't that great. And I was, just trying to get a deal. And I would honestly, like, that flip of a break even flip, I learned as much as like any profit at the time would have been worth. So
Sure.
that was still good, but focusing on the burrs was big for us. And in the meantime, would go to the real estate meetups, meet different people, and found kind of my first mentors in the market that I was doing these rehabs with, because I was the hustler and the grinder, and they had the experience and the money to do the rehab, so we fit together there really well. And they also ran a wholesaling business, so after leaving my job at base, I'd in the evenings or on weekends go on more appointments with sellers, negotiate at the kitchen table or in the living room, and got really good at doing direct to seller deals. So did lease options, did seller financing, did partnerships, all this kind of stuff for the buy and holds, and was really like marketing to get the best deals, and was wholesaling them if me or my partners didn't want to keep them. And then also marketing for myself, like sending very specific like mailing groups of 50 to 100 a week for this like house and guest house strategy, which we found a lot of success with early on in Florida.
Very cool. Very cool. I know from your bio, I know from knowing your background a little bit, I know you then scaled. So maybe walk us through that evolution, right? So there's the sort of the single family burr strategy, wholesaling, flipping, all of that rolls into that sort of residential side of it. If you've got a guest unit, great. But I know you then kind of moved up in terms of unit count from there. So
Yeah.
talk about how that came to be.
Yeah, so all that stuff I was just talking about was really in like our first 3 to 6 months in Florida. Like in back-to-back months, we closed our first 3 houses, and they were like strangely almost like a month to the day apart. So like month 1, month 2, month 3, closed 3 houses, which was awesome. So we got through a lot really fast, because the market was really ready for it, and we're doing the right things. Like I didn't know how to do everything correctly, but I just knew, like, if I put out the letters or I went out to the appointments, if I did all those things, like, kind of filling the top of the funnel, you'll get more success at the bottom of the funnel with closed deals. And after about a year, I think we had, in about that year time frame, we had about 11 residential units, and had actually got to the point where we replaced my W-2 income, because my wife was still getting her doctorate at the time. So we replaced my income with our like passive net cash flow of all our rentals, which consisted of some multi-unit short-term rentals and some single family long-term rentals and duplex long-term rental. So I had 11 units at the time, surpassed the W-2 income. And that was like my 5-year goal, going into the Air Force thing. I had this 5-year commitment. I wanted to be at that point in 5 years, but it happened in 1 year. So then then I started to think bigger, like just completing my 5-year goal in 1 year. So what could I do if I actually was intentional about, um, pursuing this growth, taking all these lessons learned and going up to a bigger scale? And from that point, got into commercial multifamily, found some mentors there, and really just dove in, like all the things I'd been doing, looking at wholesaling, negotiating with sellers, turned into, talking with brokers, finding passive investors, analyzing deals, looking for deals and screening them, and all those different kind of things you have to do in the multifamily game. And that led to about 8 months of that, just grinding at it while we're finishing up our last residential rehabs, while we're just kind of running that business. And it's pretty passive at the time. Closed our first apartment syndication at the beginning of 2021 with some partners, and yeah, jumped into the commercial space.
Cool. I'm glad you sort of mentioned time frame, because I was going to ask you when this had all started for you. But so you got into commercial closed multifamily, and I know that you have also invested in the boutique hotel space. So talk about that a little bit. Like I said before we started recording, I haven't really. I've known a few people that are in there, but more peripherally, and I haven't really talked to anybody about it on the podcast. So I'm actually very interested, and I think the listeners will find that really cool as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess backing up, I said the beginning of last year, but I'm not used to it being 2023 yet. So this was really like 2 years ago at the very beginning of 2021. And if you remember at that time, like the multifamily market was getting really, really tight. That's when all the institutional money started coming, the cap rate started compressing, and it started getting really hard to find deals. And you're competing against institutional investors, especially like even in tertiary markets, especially secondary markets. It was getting really hard for me anyway to source multifamily deals, because I wasn't, established, right? I had done one deal and didn't have the credibility or the funding, to really compete on some of these deals, and it just got so competitive. Even the ones that they wouldn't have looked at in 2020, they were starting to look at and close in 2021. So I started to look at, what were my skill sets at the time. I think, like relationships and raising money was one of them, finding deals, and sourcing deals, and then kind of putting all that together, the pieces together to close the deal, were kind of my skills at the time. So I was looking at the experience real estate wise, had got into commercial, learned that really well, had ran and operated our own short-term rental business all the way down to like the cleaning when we first started, messaging guests, and, built our tech stack over time, our, awareness of what just short-term rental guests expect, at least in our market. So I was like, how can I kind of marry these two skills? And at first, I started looking at other commercial deals, like hospitality assets that could potentially be converted to multifamily, like find a, 120, 140 unit hotel, through a big renovation, which I was, which would have been huge at the time, but I was comfortable with doing that because I did the same thing for the Air Force, buying and managing contracts and all that stuff. So I was looking for those, and in the midst of that, found this little 8 unit in Fort Walton Beach, about an hour and a half away from me. That was multifamily, but in a commercial zoning district where it could be rented as short-term rental. And I was like, wow, I have 8 short-term rentals right now in Panama City. I buy this when they all be in one location, and kind of, get the benefits of multifamily as you and I know them. Like you have, a single product, you have all your units in one location, and it just makes it a little bit more scalable, and you have economies of scale rather than having 8 units spread out. You have these 8 right here, laundry on site, so you could do your whole operation there.
Sure.
So this was early 2021, got that one seller finance, and that really kicked off our boutique hotel business. I bought that one myself, and then my partner and I at the time, or I guess became my partner, we partnered up on the multifamily deal, the 66 unit. And I went to college together, good friends, and decided to start like, let's look for more of these boutique hotels. Commercial multifamily is really crowded. There's a lot less competition in the marketplace, especially then, because, we're in the waning effects of COVID. Hospitality still took a hit, and not many people were interested in that asset class, but we knew the potential of it. The income potential was much more than the multifamily at the time, both from like a cash flow and equity growth perspective. So we jumped into that, and I think over the next 6 months we bought 3 more. We packaged those in one portfolio, 2 in Panama City, in Panama City, Florida, Panama City Beach, and in South Lake Tahoe, California. And then through our renovations, talking to people about this, meeting more people in our market. I talked to you before this was doing the podcast at the time, and somebody I'd done that podcast with got me on to, or he had kind of this deal lead that they weren't going to end up pursuing in South Lake Tahoe. So then we got our second one. So now we've got the 5 boutique hotels across those 3 different markets.
You don't live in Florida anymore, right?
No, we just moved to Utah for my last assignment here.
Okay.
In the Air Force.
So, I mean, the purchase of these things probably not that different than, I mean, even there are differences in between residential and commercial purchases, but ultimately, like the deal acquisition side seems like that's almost like your superpower. You're good with the relationships and direct marketing and all of that. What about when it came to, so you bought this, start with the first one or whatever, but like you bought this 8 unit, and did it need a lot of renovations, right? So if we're going to run it as a short-term rental or a hotel, everything's got to be furnished, right? So if you're not buying it that way, then my assumption is there was a lot of capital that had to go into, sort of renovations and furnishing and making it a place that people want to come to.
Yeah, so this one was a huge renovation. My just being naive at the time, I thought it would be, a respectable rehab, go in, redo the kitchenettes, new plumbing fixtures, new light fixtures, paint, flooring, that kind of thing, like a more of a cosmetic rehab, and then refurnish it, paint the outside and make it look really nice and kind of this boutique feel. But we got into that one and just had every problem imaginable. Had actually just, I think, put out a YouTube video about this deal specifically this week or last week, but really like broke down the pain points of this, because there's a ton of learning lessons, and this was the earliest one. So this is the first one that was the smallest, hardest, and like the most expensive from like a capital outlay standpoint. And it really helped the others going forward, because there was learning lessons that helped going forward from there. But yeah, this one ended up being a full rehab, full new roof, redid probably 30%, maybe more of the framing. Like we took down a whole wall, like it was a concrete block wall, took it all down, supported it, and then went back with a wood framed wall, treated all the wood, like new plumbing, new water lines, new electrical. I mean, everything is new, doors, windows. So that took a long time. I was not expecting that up front. Had to bring in some additional capital about halfway through the project to actually get the end up selling another property of my own to put the money into that as well. And finally made it through. But yeah, that full renovation, full refurnishing, and now it's a really nice, product that's everything's new in there, and the maintenance has been very low since. The response from guests has been very good, because it's just, there's not a lot of like it's 8 rooms, and each room has its own theme and its color palette and like different decor. So it's like got a really unique individual feel. And then we've had multiple people come back and stay in different units. So like every unit's, its own little thing. But when we went to furnish that, it was previously ran as like a rent by the night, maybe even a rent by the hour kind of place, like just a very, very poor reputation in the area. Like when we went through our permitting process at the building department, it was just a nightmare because they had known the reputation of this property. But what we did is, I mean, like I talked about, we demoed everything, changed the layout of a lot of the kitchens to free up more space so that we could kind of, and then for our furnishing plan, we kind of created like natural divides in the room with the furnishing. So it's like a big studio, but you've got your bed and your nightstand and your kind of desk over in one area. and then it's kind of split with the couch and the positioning of the wall and the TV, and then you got your dining area and kitchenette, closet and bathroom in the back. So really like utilizing the space to accommodate, 2 to 3 guests that I think our average length of stay is like 5 or 6 days. So people are staying a little bit longer. Whether they're coming for I think there's 3 military bases around, there's a lot of construction. There's a lot of different things that bring people to this area, Fort Walton Beach. So it's like thinking about the end guest in mind and what those people are going to want. That's why we did built out kitchenettes in the rooms that didn't have them, because we knew that would be huge. Because if you just have a studio, you have like a whole different kind of guest. You're really kind of commoditized in your market. It's just like a hotel room. And then why stay with you if you don't have those kind of features, that all the way down to the outdoor space and kind of optimizing the flow there. So that was kind of the plan with the renovation, thinking about our guest, thinking about our location with like the beach themed decor. And then, yeah, so we set it up.
So, because now you have you have single family short-term rentals, and then you have these boutique hotels.
Yep.
Do you feel like there are differences between them, like in terms of demand, the guests that are like?
Yeah, I think so.
It almost feels like it would be different, but I don't know. I don't have any.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference we've seen is like, a house we have varying from like 3 bedroom, 2 baths, like 4 bedroom, 3 baths that are essentially in the same submarket. Those are in Panama City, and then our hotels are in like Panama City Beach. That's 15, 20 minutes away. So we get much more families at the houses. Like, they'll bring 8 to 12 people depending on the house and the number of beds in there. And that's great. And then our hotels, most of them are studios or 1 bedrooms, and each hotel we have a handful of 2 bedroom, 1 bath units. So those get families as well who are looking for something a little bit cheaper, closer to the beach, but not like right in they're right across from the beach, but there's like kind of the central area of Panama City Beach that's super busy. That's where the trucks and cars fly through, blaring their music, the motorcycles go through, revving their Harleys, revving the engine. So we're just a couple blocks off of that, but close enough to everything. So our guests there, typically stay a little bit shorter. It's much more couples, and they're looking for more of like a amenity packed hotel. So the reason they're not staying as a hotel is because we've got the on-site amenities. Almost all of ours have kitchenettes. We've got our pool on site. We're right across from the beach. There's condos and short-term rentals around there, but there's not like the Holiday Inn and different kind of stuff like that necessarily right on the beach in that market. So I think the guest profile is just a little bit different than out in Tahoe. Of course, we have, people that are coming from the Bay Area and, which is a short drive away. Sacramento and Reno are, an hour and 2 hours away. So we have much higher rates there and people willing to pay more. And then we also have 2 bedroom units there as well that do great and stay full with families. So I think the typical difference between like the boutique hotel type unit and the rental house is like the individualized experience you get with the house. Like you can have that space all by yourself with your family, stay 4 or 5 days, maybe even the full week around like certain holidays and especially through the summer, and kind of really make that your home away from home. But for these hotels, they're looking for a little bit more. It's like the amenities, the convenience, being able to work from home. That's a big one. So a lot of our properties have like really fast commercial Wi-Fi. So that's another perk. So it's just kind of like, and each market's different too. Like that's why I talked about Panama City versus South Lake Tahoe. Like your guest profile is very different, and you really have to know what in your local area brings people there in the first place, and then kind of look at your property and decide or create that, uniqueness or amenity mix or whatever it is that'll have them pick your place when they come to that market.
Yeah, I guess that's maybe where I was going with that question too, is just trying to understand, well, how did you know ahead of time? Did you research this, or you're just kind of, let's put these in place and kind of tailor it as we go, or maybe it's a little bit of both. I guess if you find something that's not working, you change it. But
Yeah.
how did you find that out? I suppose, like, how did you realize this is what we want here?
Yeah, I think on the front, so it definitely changes from like the back end when you have the data and be able to look at like the guests that have chosen your place, because really before you have guests stay there and get their feedback and reviews, you're really just going off a hunch anyway. Like you can look at, market data and what brings people there, but if you're creating something that's that has its own unique positioning in the market, you're really not going to know until the back end. So on the front end, what we did is kind of, I think in both instances, um, the the theme and the design, I guess, in each market is kind of individualized to that market. So like in Panama City, we have kind of light, airy, breezy, bright colors, all that to kind of bring out like the summer vibe, the beach vibe, all those things that kind of people expect when they come to a beach market on vacation or a staycation or whatever it is. And then in South Lake Tahoe, we've got lake rooms because we're just a couple blocks away from Lake Tahoe, and we've got like more mountain themed rooms, which we're right across. We're like 2 blocks from the trails of the Sierra Nevadas, which are beautiful there too as well. And then we've got like those pieces mixed in with like ski and snowboard memorabilia and decor, because we've got like the Heavenly Gondola and 3 other ski resorts within driving distance as well around Lake Tahoe. So it's kind of finding what your market positioning is and then designing to that and just trying to stick out from the other areas. Like what we did was we looked at, other condos, other short-term rentals, other boutique hotels and lodges in our area, and kind of figured out what they were missing that we could provide with our properties and how we could capitalize on the amenities that we did have and kind of market, in our listing descriptions and our titles and different stuff like that the guests would see, how we could market and capitalize on those features to attract them to us. And on the back end, this is something that we've done recently as well, is we've hosted, I don't know, 14,000 people, something like that. So we have thousands and thousands and thousands of reviews, and we'll go through there and we'll look at of course our bad and our negative reviews and try to fix those things. But there's also a lot of good data hiding in the good reviews of, what your guests find really appealing, what they really like and what resonates with them at the property. And then you can kind of decide like, Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule. So like 20% of your guest or the guest type is going to produce 80% of your revenue. So we want to find what those 20% of our best guests that, are easy to communicate with, really like the property, like us as a brand, or like, as the property manager communicating with them, kind of curating their experience. We want to find what sticks out at each property through our reviews. And for like Moose and Maple Lodge in Tahoe, that's very family oriented. It's dog friendly. It's close to Heavenly Gondola, close to the lake, so it attracts that kind of group of people. And then something like Bahama Breeze in Florida, it's got a private gate and a private pool and cabana, so they love the privacy, the security, the location being right across from the beach. It's mostly smaller rooms, so very like couples oriented, or like people that book multiple rooms for sporting events because they're really close to the sports complex where they host, soccer and baseball and softball all summer long. So it's kind of figuring out, the guest type that wants to stay at your property. And then you can then again change your listings, change your titles, change your marketing to to appeal to those people. And then you get more, then you get better reviews.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, it's just using that sort of constant feedback and using the good reviews to focus on those being the guests that you want, right? The ones that
Yeah.
are going to leave you a good review are the ones that are going to make
you don't want the bad guests, like
right.
The low rates, or you like try to appeal to something that's really not your strength, and you get the people that expect that to be your strength and it's not, and then they leave you bad reviews. So yeah, we're about finding the right guest now that we've kind of identified what that is in each market and then each property, because it varies differently, or it varies slightly based on like the property, even though they're a couple miles away, just because they have a different setup, a different feel, slightly different locations. So you have different people that prefer each.
This is probably going to be a maybe bigger question than than you're going to have time to go through all of it. But it's interesting to me because you've done, kind of the residential burrs, short-term stays. You've done some multifamily and you've done boutique hotels. So what do you, maybe, I'm sure there's a large list, but maybe some pros and cons, and like, specifically, I'm curious in terms of returns. What do you, if you go on social media, everybody's like, oh, short-term rentals, that's gonna get you the best cash flow. Probably true. I'm not arguing that point, but there are certainly pros and cons to each of those different asset classes. And I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are, given that, the different ones that you've done.
Yeah, I think, starting out with short-term rentals, because that's the one we've been in most aggressively for the last 2 years. That one, I think, and I experienced it my first year. That one's got the quickest potential to get you, to that like financial independence, like the base layer of, all right, I've got more cash flow coming in from the real estate that I own, the rentals that I manage. Then that meets my living expenses, and that's what happened for us. And got to the point where it was just replacing all the income. So that one has the ability to get you there faster. Now I think the times, and in 2019 when we were doing that compared to now in 2023, those returns have really started to compress over the last year and a half or 2 years. You've seen hedge funds and private equity companies pop up that have funds to go acquire short-term rentals in various markets across the country. So it's definitely caught on. And we kind of like fell into it and then just fell in love with it because that first guest unit. But now it's become much more, there's just more competition there. Like more people are aware of it. So now like short-term rentals was always a balance of like, is the cash flow worth the extra time? And for a lot of people, that might not be the case anymore. Because you might, go buy a single family house, back in the day and get a 15% return, or maybe get a 30% on a short-term rental. Because we typically, for our houses, we had long and short terms, and would have anywhere from 2 to 3x of the cash flow on a short term as we would compared to a long term. But now, like, you got to look at like inflation, insurance costs, different things. As you hold that property, the maintenance might go up. You got to replace furniture over time. And on the buy side, properties are more expensive now.
Right.
Interest rates are higher, so there's still a play there for arbitrage. I think for sure, like rental arbitrage, going and leasing units from landlords and then subleasing to Airbnb guests and being your own property manager there. Yeah, it's just gotten harder. And then I think with multifamily, I mean, there's so, and we kind of really see this like or like the in between of like the benefits of multifamily and short-term rentals. Because with multifamily, you're buying these very expensive properties, you get the depreciation, right? You get the cash flow from it, you get the appreciation over time, you get the equity pay down as well. So you have all four wealth generators there, which in like a rental arbitrage you might not have. In short-term rentals, it's a little bit different because your depreciation isn't as impactful as it is on a $10 million commercial multifamily building. But we're buying anywhere from $1 to $3.5 million boutique hotels so far. We've looked at all the way up to 15 million. Didn't get that one, put our offer in, gonna get it. But in the multifamily side, like we're kind of like in between those of, we have all four wealth generators because we own the real estate, and then we can also bonus depreciate everything we furnish the property with. So from a tax perspective, we're very tax advantaged. So really good for passive investors who want to get that cash flow in short-term rentals. Then we've also got more units gives us more levers on the revenue management side of things, of putting premiums on other units. We have a lot of data that we can compile to like operate in the best, in an optimized fashion. So really good from a passive investor standpoint on ours, because you get all that depreciation. And on the multifamily side, again, like interest rates make it really hard. I think there's a case out there for seller financing and different things, and people coming up on, their adjustable rate mortgages that need to sell that, might need to cut a loss on, asset A and focus on assets B and C. So they'll kind of cut out that loser, the one that's got the adjustable rate mortgage, to save the rest of their portfolio, not completely go under. So I think there's a buying opportunity across the board, whether that's short-term rentals or multifamily or single family. And then I think, like, as far as pros and cons are concerned, when you get into single family, it's a lot harder. There's not the economies of scale there. If you have, 100 different rental units in one location, as opposed to, in one market, as opposed to 100 rental units in your apartment complex on one site, those all have the same, HVAC units. It's one building, you've got one roof, you've got one kind of flooring, one kind of paint, all that kind of thing. So there's efficiency there. And it's really hard to scale out single family homes, I think, because I started to do it and I was like, yeah, it's not quite as efficient. I've got to run around to the east side of the county and then over to the beach side. And then I've got to run to Lowe's, do all this different kind of stuff.
Right.
But the acquisition side is definitely much easier. I think it's the operation scalability that gets a little bit harder.
Yeah. Yeah.
As with single family.
No, thank you for that. I mean, that's a really a great sort of overview and comparison of all of those three. And I think it ultimately comes down to, and we talk about this a lot, but it's just like people need to understand what their investment philosophy is, both from a, sort of what they want from returns, whether it's tax benefits or equity or cash flow or whatever, but also the time involvement that they want to have in this, in the real estate
that's
space.
a big implication, especially as, you and I, like, our focus is kind of like the passive income, live your life, like have real estate be the the not the ends as the means kind of thing. And a lot of people can kind of almost build themselves into a job, right? If you don't set your portfolio up intentionally, especially, I've seen, gosh, so many like short-term rental operators go out of business, especially like just management companies that don't own the real estate. And a lot of arbitragers as well just got out because they didn't have the bedrock foundation of owning the real estate. So it's a hard business to do really well. Like I could give my experience there. But it's hard to do well, and especially when you're doing everything. And luckily we got to the scale where we can have our own W-2 property managers, assistant property managers, maintenance on site, a director of operations, our back end concierge. So it's not, me or my partner messaging the guests, and doing all the things. Right. We just kind of got to, we're at that point where we can like focus on the business, make improvements to our processes and procedures, look at new deals, make sure that our, operations are dialed in, that we're operating from a tax standpoint really well. And everything from that side. So it can be really hard. And I think if you're starting like single family or something like that, especially if you have no experience, it's really easy to get into that game and learn the experience, go through a closing, kind of get your feet wet, and even do a rehab on the residential side. And once you kind of get to that base level, then you can make that decision and also like find out what you like doing and say, okay, like, am I really good talking to people and giving pitches? Like, cool, I can be a capital raiser and go do a big commercial multifamily. Like, do I just love, like fulfilling people's vacation desires and creating memories and creating cool design, like unique spaces? Cool, let's go, build out the short-term rental business and get more units and do that kind of thing. So, I think when you get in kind of at a smaller level, you can kind of experience, kind of like I did, you can experience the benefits of all that stuff and find which one works for you.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. That the experimenting, you really should do that probably at the when you're in the beginning.
Yeah,
because
it's really hard to go raise $10 million for a syndication and then say, hey, I want to go test this out now.
Right,
it doesn't get investors. Well,
also, I mean, you talked about sort of this team that you've built. It's you're now, it's a business, right? So it's like, well, I built this business. I'm going to go mess around and do some, other, Bitcoin mining or whatever it is, right? It's like you have to get to that point where as you grow, you have to put the systems in place for that scale and that growth. And so it becomes, you want to know that you're going in the right direction to build that business towards, I think ultimately it's a really good thing to be cognizant of. Blake, let me switch gears. This is actually really super interesting to me, but I'm sure you have other things to do today too. So let me get to the part of the podcast where I ask you the questions I ask every guest. And the first one is based on the name of the show being Know Your Why. So what is your why? What drives you, towards bigger and bigger success?
Yeah, good question. I think it like kind of like we talked about at the beginning, it comes from just like, I don't know, my competitive athlete nature. Like when I do something, I want to be the best at it. And, growing up, we didn't have a whole lot. So I felt, the like financial pressures of what that feels like to kind of live paycheck to paycheck. So I've always known that like I wanted to get into into business to create, some semblance of abundance for my family, like give them opportunities and, be able to live comfortably. But now it's definitely become much more of like building the impact and the brand of the company from our employees and like giving them great opportunities and training and development, kind of fulfilling their professional needs. Like that gives me a lot of fulfillment as a business owner. And then just creating like a brand and a business that's, respectable from somebody who, has gone through the grind and built it. And I just like creating, like when I'm pull up my computer to jump into whatever it is operations wise, or,
Yeah.
I'm doing property walkthroughs and talking to contractors and kind of building that vision of, what each property is. I just really like that stuff. So it doesn't, it doesn't feel like work. So I like to find, fulfillment in that. And then also as we built this company, it's allowed me to, spend more time with my wife. And as we, have kids in the next few years and start to build our own family, like I want to be that dad that can be there for them and show them like the fruits of, the past, couple years, decades, whatever it is at that point of labor, and like kind of how that translates us into their own education and development as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Um, Tell us something about yourself that isn't common knowledge, special skill, a hobby, something to let the listeners know you a little better.
That's a good one. I for a while I played guitar for a little bit. I always had problems. I don't have rhythm. Like all my friends would, joke about my dancing and just no rhythm. Like I'll be like trying to keep beat and just be off beat. So I cannot hardly ever sing and play, but I really enjoyed playing guitar. And when we were packing from Florida, I grabbed my guitar. I was like, I gotta pick this out more. But I also snowboard and ski. I just spent all yesterday, and about my right quad about blew up because it was a powder day. It was like 12 inches deep, and I was just leaning back all day flexing that.
Yeah,
So really enjoyed doing that in the winter.
very cool. When people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
I think the best way would be to follow me on Instagram, hit me up there. Shoot me a message, a question, whatever you got. Would be happy to connect with you there, and um, share my experience. And then I have my YouTube channel that I've been trying to get back to as well. Like I talked about that past deal.
Yeah.
There's a lot in the lines there. We could talk for 2 or 3 hours about that one, but I compiled it all in like a 30-minute video. So just trying to, share more of my learning experiences and kind of what we do, because there's not a whole lot of people, um, following our real estate strategy necessarily. And I think there's a lot of good lessons there. So hopefully I can help you guys.
Yeah, awesome. Final question for you, Blake. What's a piece of advice you would give to someone who's getting started in real estate and looking to grow and scale like you have?
I think, today we're recording January 2nd, 2023. So I think right now is a really, really critical time in the market. And I think very similar to how I was doing, because I wanted the repetitions. I wanted to get off to a fast start. Like you have to be putting out the work to get the results. Like put out your offers, write your mailers, make your calls, go on your appointments, do all that thing, because we're in a market right now where sellers are giving concessions, prices are coming down. Like we don't know what's going to happen with interest rates, but it really doesn't matter. Like marry the property and date the rate. You can always refinance later. Like you're not, like when you sign a 30-year mortgage or whatever, you're not locked into a 30-year rate. You can refinance later on when rates drop, and that'll increase your cash flow. So like it's really important, I think, to just get started, take the action, especially like if you're brand new. You could go house hack and almost eliminate all your risk because you need a place to live anyway. And then you can rent out that other unit and kind of learn how to be a landlord. You can go through the closing process. You can, do any fix up or renovations, become your own handyman, and kind of learn that side of it. But yeah, I think right now is a really good time to be be taking the action, because I think there's, especially like through the holiday season, like I had some buddies making a lot of deals happen because they were doing marketing when everybody else was kind of taking off. But I think there's a lot of people kind of sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what happens. And that's kind of what we experienced like in the middle of 2020, when COVID happened too. And the people that acted scooped up a lot of deals for really good prices. So like those, when you buy right, it's really hard to lose.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's that Warren Buffett saying about when other people are scared, be greedy, and vice versa. Something like it's very true. It's kind of
don't follow. I think as far as
opportunities.
like market timing comes, don't succumb to hive mind. Like when everybody else is scared and freaked out, like you should be looking for deals, putting out offers, and like if anything, put out really conservative offers that like make you blush. Like no way the seller's ever going to accept it, because I promise you, if you put out enough of those, like you will get offers accepted.
Eventually someone will.
Good deals.
Don't be careless about it. You still need to do the work, and the offers need to make sense. But if you're as you said, kind of putting in the work, essentially playing a volume game and saying I'm going to put out, if other people aren't putting out offers, I'm going to put out 50, right? And so if one of those gets accepted, like you're moving in the right direction. So
and also when you're getting started, like your repetition, you're building your skills and experiences, like is the most important thing. Like you're not, 99.99% chance you're not going to hit a home run your first deal, but you're going to learn so much with experience. So just go out there and get that first deal.
100% agree. Listen, Blake, this is awesome. Thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for your service. I appreciate you, and appreciate you sharing your story with us.
I appreciate it. Yeah, Jason, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Okay, folks, when you hear this, definitely connect with Blake and go ahead and like, rate, and review the podcast so we can get more great guests.
And Happy New Year to everyone.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Balara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you.